On stage, they shine like queens. Their voices make thousands of hearts flutter. But when the lights go down, they return to a suffocating loneliness. One agreed to get married to hide her lesbian relationship for 17 years, living in a loveless marriage just to keep her career. Another was disowned by her mother after she found out she loved a woman until her dying day. She was not allowed to see her mother one last time. They are talented singers, R&B icons, but forced to live as if love is a sin. And what you are about to hear is even more heartbreaking. Prepare yourself for a tearful journey and the truth hidden for decades about 20 black female R&B singers who are lesbians. Listen to the whole video and share your feelings in the comments. 20. Jackie Moms Mabley, the woman who made America laugh, but hid behind that laughter. She appeared on stage in loose dresses, a never-ending grin, messy hair, and a raspy voice like a naughty old lady. People called her Moms because of her cute, approachable appearance, but in the history of American entertainment, Jackie Mabley was the first black woman to dare to use comedy to talk about herself in a profound, intelligent, and somewhat painful way. She was a vaudeville performer, a traveling singer, a storyteller, and an openly lesbian woman in the 1920s, a time when even being black was an excuse to be trampled on. Jackie was born into a world that had no place for women like her. She had an abusive childhood and was forced into marriage when she was a teenager, after running away from home. She followed the troupe, singing and performing from small theaters to big cities. At a stop in New Orleans, she met Clara, a jazz singer 4 years younger than her. With a smile in her eyes and curly hair that smelled of lavender, the two quickly became close. Clara didn't laugh when Jackie told jokes, she listened. Jackie didn't need to wear a mask when talking to Clara. She looked straight at her. One rainy night, when the troupe stopped at a cheap motel, Jackie took Clara for a walk along the river. They talked about their dreams of living authentically, of loving without fear. Clara took Jackie's hand. It was warm, soft, shaking. Then she kissed her on the cheek. But another performer saw. The next morning, Clara was forced to leave the troupe. No goodbye, no chance to explain. Jackie found only a folded piece of paper in her suitcase. "I don't deserve to make you lose your stage." Jackie never mentioned Clara's name again, but in a later skit, she had a line, "I loved someone once, and only got one kiss enough to remember for the rest of my life." Jackie lived her whole life in two versions: on stage funny, brilliant, unconventional, offstage reserved, lonely, and knowing exactly where she was not meant to be. She was one of the few openly lesbian artists in a time of discrimination. But she was rarely recognized as a pioneer because people only remembered her laughter, not the sadness behind it. Jackie Mabley died in 1975 without a husband, without children, without scandal. Only her plays and her TV laugh are still replayed every night. But every time the laughter rings out, we can't help but wonder, was that woman ever loved properly? In this world, being kind sometimes means just being silent so that others can be true to themselves. And sometimes, a smile also hides a silent plea for freedom. 19. Big Mama Thornton, the woman with the voice of thunder, but the heart is always silent. She stood in the middle of the stage with a massive body, a man's vest, a cigarette between her fingers, and a voice like thunder. Big Mama Thornton did not need anyone to lead. She ruled the room. She was the first person to record the song Hound Dog, but her name was overshadowed by Elvis Presley. Not only was she robbed of her credit, Big Mama was also a black woman who lived with a sexuality and emotions that no one dared to admit publicly at that time. She did not declare, did not speak, but everyone close to her knew clearly she loved women. In the early 50s, during a recording session in Houston, she met Ray, a studio employee of Mexican descent, light-skinned and quiet. Ray always sat in the back of the control room, quietly adjusting the sound. One day, when the studio was empty, Big Mama played an acoustic blues, no words, just scattered notes full of emotion. When she finished playing, Ray said, "I've never heard anyone play like they're saying I love you." Big Mama didn't reply. She just smiled and handed Ray a cigarette. They had a summer together evenings around the old radio station, Ray cutting her hair, cooking for Ray. But then one day, An anonymous letter arrived at the record company. A black singer is living as a man and seducing female employees. Ray was fired within a week. She never saw her again. Since then, Big Mama has never had a public relationship. She drank more, performed more intensely. She once told a reporter, "I don't need a man, I need music and alcohol." But those close to her say she always kept an old photo in her wallet, a photo of a woman in a corner of a recording studio with her back turned, her hair tied up. Big Mama Thornton died poor, suffering from alcoholism and diabetes. No grand funeral, no honorary titles, no mention of her love, only her voice, resonant, rough, cutting straight to the heart. Sometimes the strongest people are the ones who have to bury their feelings the deepest. Sometimes we just want a place to love without being chased away for loving the wrong person. And sometimes, if the world could just learn to let others live their truth, that would be a decent life. 18. Koko Taylor, the blues queen with an untouchable heart. They called her the Queen of Chicago Blues, the woman with a thunderous growl, who had emerged from the mud of a Mississippi farm to stand tall in a city filled with cigarettes, guitars, and artistry. But what made people skeptical was not just the power of her voice, it was the eyes, the gestures, the silence of a woman who always kept her distance from everyone, especially men. The more famous she became, the more secretive she became. Throughout her life, Koko Taylor had only one husband, but he was also the only one who never appeared with her in public. It was rumored that she had loved a woman in her youth, a love so deeply buried that only her broken singing voice remained. In 1951, when Koko was washing dishes for a bar in Memphis, she met Marie, a bass player in a traveling band. Marie was not beautiful, but she had piercing eyes. They often met late in the day, when the bar was empty. One night, in the cramped room behind the kitchen, Marie sang an old blues in a low, lost voice. Koko sat silently, then suddenly embraced her, almost reflexively. No explanation, just a shaky breath and an unwilling embrace. The relationship lasted no more than 3 weeks. One night, the bar owner caught them holding hands in the cold room. The next day, Marie disappeared from the band. Koko was fired. A few months later, she left Memphis, leaving everything behind. A few years later, she resurfaced in Chicago, starting from scratch. But in every song she sang, from Wang Dang Doodle to I'm a Woman, there was an unquenchable fire. The listener could feel the anger, but no one knew that it came from a loss she never spoke of. In her old age, Koko Taylor became a living legend, but her relatives said she would stand by the window for hours, staring into the distance, not crying, not speaking, just sighing. That woman, despite all the limelight, lacked one thing: the permission to be true to herself. Perhaps we will never know everything about Koko's heart, but one thing is certain: she loved, lost, and chose silence all her life. Sometimes, being kind to others starts with letting them love the way they choose. No questions, no definitions, just allowing them to be themselves. 17. Roberta Flack, the voice that lulls the world to sleep, the heart that lulls itself in silence. When Roberta sang Killing Me Softly with his song, the whole world seemed to fall silent. But behind that song was a woman of few words, living quietly, keeping her dark corners to herself. No scandals, no loud love words, and no one appears next to her in everyday photos. Roberta was once described as a sad singing angel. But what is her true sadness? Those closest to her say that when she was a student at Howard University, Roberta spent a lot of time with a classmate named Lorraine. They studied piano together, sat in the library together, and went to music together. Lorraine was expelled for inappropriate behavior toward female students. That story was kept quiet. But a few years later, Roberta still kept a photo of them together in her wallet, with a handwritten note, "Your silence is safer than my truth." Someone remembers that during a private performance for artists in Washington, D.C., Roberta changed the lyrics to "The first time ever I saw your face" to female pronouns, but the recording was never released. When asked, she just smiled. "I sing from my feelings. Sometimes it doesn't have to be right, it just has to be true." Roberta never married, never made any relationship public. Whenever the press asked, she just said, "I love music. Everything else, let me know." But the artist world and the backstage always whispered Roberta had a long love affair with a female producer, who withdrew from the industry after being discovered and threatened. Now, when Roberta has almost retreated from the spotlight, people still play her music every night. But who would have thought that the voice that soothed the hearts of millions had never been publicly loved? Maybe sometimes, being kind to an artist is not about praising their talent, but about allowing them to be themselves. Not a role model, not an icon, just a human being, loved and missed like all of us. 16. Marlena Shaw, the woman who sings love songs but her heart has no borders. When Marlena Shaw steps on stage, she doesn't just sing, she tells stories. She evokes the deepest parts of the human soul with a voice that is both sweet and challenging. Middle-aged Black audiences love her for her soulful songs. Young people love her for her rebellious phrasing, but there's something few dare to say outright. Marlena has repeatedly revealed her idea of love without boundaries. For her, love doesn't need to be the right gender, it just needs the right person. Born and raised in poverty in New Rochelle, New York, Marlena saw her father leave and her mother work 2 jobs to support her children. When she started her music career in Chicago, she lived in a rented room with a bandmate named Carolyn. Carolyn played the organ, was sassy, and liked to tease. But there was something between the two that went beyond intimacy. Marlena never defined it. And then, one winter night, after a performance in a small bar, Carolyn sat close, took Marlena's hand and said, "I know you're not like them, neither am I." That was the first time Marlena felt that someone saw the real person inside her. They were quiet together, avoiding the eyes of others, a love without a name, without a label. But happiness did not last long in a world of lights and prejudice. A colleague in the band accidentally saw Marlena kissing Carolyn backstage. Rumors spread quickly. Carolyn was fired immediately. The manager told Marlena bluntly, "You choose, career, or this so-called impulsive emotion." Marlena kept quiet. Carolyn packed up and left, without looking back. After that, she never performed with another band again, for her part. Marlena continued her career. She was more famous than ever. But when asked about love, she simply said, "I love souls, not genders." Once, in an interview in 1987, the host asked her about the first man who made her heart flutter. Marlena chuckled, "Not a man, but he was the first man who made me dare to sing as if I were alive." Nowadays, Marlena Shaw rarely appears, but every time people play Woman of the Ghetto or California Soul, somewhere still echoes a wordless sigh. Perhaps she did not need anyone to define her, but the world, if it were kinder, could have kept her love intact. Sometimes, the kindest thing you can do is not to make anyone choose between their heart and their dreams. Love does not need a name, it just needs to be lived, for once in a lifetime. 15. Bernice Johnson Reagon, a woman who carries the flame of revolution in her voice and silent love. Bernice is not a diva on a glamorous stage. She is the soul of a movement, the founder of the group Sweet Honey in the Rock, a collective of Black women carrying music, politics, and human rights. Bernice's voice is not colorful, not melodious, but each word and phrase resonates like a call in the hearts of many. She is the spiritual mother of liberation music, but few people know that, in addition to the public front for feminism and justice, Bernice also had to live a private life full of contradictions. She loved women in a community that still had prejudice, even from those who fought on the same side. Bernice grew up in a conservative pastoral family in the South. Any emotion outside the framework of male-female marriage was considered a sin. As a student at Albany State College, she participated in anti-racism movements. During the nights sleeping in the dormitory after the protests, Bernice fell in love with a female comrade named Ava, who held her hand tightly when the police raided. They kissed in the middle of the night, under the porch of a burned-out church. It was a brief, intense moment, but it could not last. When rumors of their relationship spread, Bernice was called to the organizing committee. A veteran member said bluntly, "We cannot fight Black oppression while getting involved in such a deviant thing." Ava withdrew from the organization. Bernice gritted her teeth and continued to fight, but from then on, she never publicly expressed her feelings for anyone. In Sweet Honey's songs, One sometimes heard the line, "My heart longs for a quiet place." Later, Bernice became a scholar, lecturer, and author of many works on traditional music, but when asked about her private life, she always avoided it. "I fell in love," she once said. "I lost him because I chose to fight instead of holding hands." Bernice Johnson Reagon needed no pity. She was a monument. But monuments hurt, too. And sometimes the greatest women are the ones who have to bury their love the deepest. Kindness is not just about saying the right thing. Sometimes it is about daring to accept others, even when their love is different from yours, because every heart has the right to be at peace. 14. Patti LaBelle, Queen of the Stage and the Unnamed Friendship. Patti LaBelle always makes the audience sway with her powerful voice, edgy fashion style, and inimitable charisma. She is one of the greatest divas of soul and R&B music, performing with Aretha Franklin, Tina Turner, and Whitney Houston. But in the bright spotlight, there is a quiet relationship that has made the public stir for decades. That is the unusual bond between her and a member of the LaBelle group, her closest friend, Nona Hendrix. In the 1970s, when LaBelle was famous for Lady Marmalade, audiences seemed to see only three strong, attractive women leading the black feminist music trend. But backstage people said that Patti and Nona were more intimate than usual eye contact during performances, handwritten letters, and private trips. Although the two always denied it, the artist community and fans could not stop the rumor of a hidden love. One night in Detroit, after a show, a stage assistant accidentally walked into the dressing room and caught Patti hugging Nona in silence, both sitting on a chair saying nothing, eyes red. No one asked, no one dared to say. But later that night, in an interview, Patti answered when asked about love, "Love doesn't always have to be called by its name, but it exists." Many years later, when LaBelle disbanded, the relationship between Patti and Nona remained the same. They were always together on important occasions, but still did not make anything public. Patti once said on a talk show, "If I ever loved anyone more than myself, it was Nona, and what people call it, I don't care." Later, as her life got older, Patti became calmer. She published a cookbook, took care of her family, and continued to tour. But people still saw Nona appearing backstage, quietly waiting for her behind the scenes, as if they had never been apart. Some loves don't need confirmation. Just a look is enough to make the heart feel light. And perhaps, throughout her busy life, Patti was truly loved by the right person, even if it wasn't the right time. Living kindly doesn't mean judging or labeling. Sometimes, just allowing each other to keep the best things without explanation. 13. Millie Jackson, the woman who speaks frankly, sings honestly, and loves without hiding. Millie Jackson has never been the type of woman to stay silent. She stormed the stage, her lyrics were bold, her voice was sarcastic, and her lines made men blush. In the 1970s, when the music industry was still shy about talking about sex, she stood on stage and spoke frankly about pleasure, loneliness, and falling in love with the wrong person. But behind that rebellious exterior was a difficult past. Born in the American South, orphaned at a young age, raised in a world of prejudice against gender, women, and color, Millie knew who she was, and she knew that her love was different from the rest. As her career took off, Millie formed her band. It included a saxophone player named Brenda Delicate, polite and quick to laugh. On tour around Texas, Millie and Brenda often shared a room to split the hotel bill, as they joked. But after a few weeks, the little gestures began to change. One time, Brenda stroked Millie's hair after she had finished a performance, her hands shaking with emotion. Another time, while they were listening to "It Hurts So Good in a Hotel Room," Millie said, "Has anyone ever hurt you like that?" Brenda just shook her head and kissed her shoulder. The affair lasted exactly 92 days, according to a drummer in the band, but then a record executive heard the rumors. He met Millie privately and warned her, "We're selling your sexy voice. Don't scare the public with a lesbian rumor." Millie didn't react, but after the tour, Brenda was kicked out of the band. No one said goodbye. One night, Brenda disappeared, leaving behind a leather jacket that Millie kept for the next 15 years. Millie never confirmed anything, but she continued to sing about women who love in silence, about love affairs that never came to fruition, in an interview after her retirement. She laughed loudly. "I love whoever makes my heart flutter. Men or women, I don't count." Today, Millie lives peacefully, still outspoken, still cooks for friends, still makes no apologies for who she is. She doesn't need society to accept her. She just needs society to stop stopping her. Sometimes being kind is simply letting others love the way they want, sing the way they want, and exist as they are, without having to explain. Millie lived that way, and she has no regrets. 12. Gaye Adegbalola, the woman who sings the blues with raw truth. Gaye Adegbalola is not a stereotypical star. She doesn't follow trends. She doesn't flaunt her glamour. But it is her raw, sharp, and rebellious blues that have touched thousands of hearts, especially those who have been pushed to the margins of society. A founding member of the group Sapphire, the Uppity Blues Women. Gaye was a chemistry teacher before music took her on a different journey. But what surprised many was not her singing, but her courage when she publicly came out as a lesbian in 1992, amid a wave of discrimination that had not yet subsided. Gaye once talked about her first love, a woman named Roz. They met at a feminist conference in Washington. Roz had a soft voice, a slightly tilted smile, and a gaze that made people unable to look away. One drizzly evening, when everyone had almost gone home, Roz reached out to wipe the raindrops from Gaye's cheeks and said, "You don't have to be so strong all the time." That was the first time Gaye allowed herself to soften. They fell in love quietly. But their love was not peaceful. A member of the local community found out and started spreading the word. The rumors reached Gaye's parents and the school where she taught. Gaye was threatened with losing her job. Roz was pressured by her own family. In the end, Gaye chose to leave her lover to save the career and reputation she was building. After that, Gaye no longer hid. She put her own story into song, turning the blues into a voice for those who had no voice. She organized public talks, joined the LGBTQ+ movement, and inspired a generation of Black women to live their truth. Her current life is a series of connecting, healing, and singing the unbending truth. Gaye once said, "I lost my first love, but that made me realize I couldn't stay silent forever." Kindness sometimes doesn't lie in grand gestures. It begins with daring to admit everyone deserves to be loved, and there's no need to apologize for it. 11. Gladys Knight, the sacred voice and the relationship that never got a name. The world knows Gladys Knight as the Empress of Soul, the Queen of sacred love songs, who made Midnight Train to Georgia an immortal symbol of soul music. But few people know that behind the glittering lights, amid failed marriages and lonely years, there was a woman who entered her heart, a co-star on the 1976 tour, known to the crew simply as Dee. Dee was the show's lead dancer, possessing a gentle beauty and a reserved personality. On many nights, Dee was the one to hold Gladys's sweaty hair as she walked off stage. No words of love, no public gestures, but their eyes made everyone on the crew whisper. One night in Houston, the two were seen holding hands backstage. Rumors began to spread. The manager asked Dee to quit right after the tour. Gladys said nothing, but for the rest of that year, during each ballad, her voice dropped unusually. A former assistant recalled seeing Gladys cry while recording Neither One of Us Wants to Be the First to Say Goodbye, and that was the only time she cried in the studio. The relationship was never confirmed. Gladys chose to remain silent. She married several times after that, but those close to her said no one made her as speechless as Dee did. Now, as Gladys turns 80, she still performs, still sings with an unblemished heart, but sometimes, in a quiet sentence, one can still hear an unnamed figure. Not all love needs to be made public, but all love deserves recognition. Being kind doesn't mean understanding others, but rather ceasing to judge them for loving differently than you do. If you've come this far, it means your heart is open enough to listen to the forgotten whispers. The first 10 women have emerged with powerful voices, but then there are hidden memories, nameless kisses, and unspoken words of love. But the story is not over. There are deeper pains, more difficult truths waiting. And let's ask, if these people were men, would society treat them differently? 10. Tillery, the silent keeper of the nameless souls. In the funk and soul wave of the 70s, Tillery was not a loud star. But for women who loved freedom, she was a silent symbol. Linda's voice carried African sounds, folk breath, and the heart of the forgotten. As the founder of the Cultural Heritage Choir, she used music to tell Black history, but no one knew that her private life was also a hidden part of history. Linda once shared about her first love, a white female musician, when they were both students. They loved each other in confusion and fear. One evening, after performing at a church in Oakland, Linda held her lover's hand in front of an audience, and in that moment, a stern look from the manager made them let go. A few weeks later, her girlfriend was removed from the collaboration project. From then on, Linda lived a more private life, but also a stronger. She openly came out as a lesbian, stood up for LGBTQ+ rights, and always appeared with a calm appearance. Her current life is music, community, and serenity without needing approval from society. Sometimes, kindness is not accepting others to live differently, but letting them live their true self without needing to explain. 9. Natalie Cole, the princess with a heart imprisoned in the Palace of Light. Daughter of Nat King Cole, Natalie is considered American music royalty, but behind the spotlight, she is a woman who is always compared, always having to prove that she is not just her father's shadow. After many years of struggling with addiction and illness, Natalie also carries within her a sadness that is hard to name, her first love, with a hidden studio singer. They met at a recording session in Los Angeles. He was not famous, but he had eyes that listened and hands that knew how to hold Natalie when she was shaking. The recording sessions lasted until late at night, the awkward hugs backstage, and then one day, a manager whispered in Natalie's ear, "If you have any more contact with that person, the company will terminate the contract." Natalie withdrew. No explanation. He disappeared. Only a song that Natalie once whispered in the studio, never released. With the opening line, "She touched me and I felt safe." Later, Natalie had a family, became famous again, and won a Grammy. But everyone saw in her eyes a sadness that never went away, maybe because of a love that was never sung. Don't be so quick to judge someone's life just by what they make public, because the most pitiful thing is to hide love, while the whole world hears you sing about it every day. 8. Chaka Khan, a woman who sings for herself, without anyone's permission. Chaka Khan is a living flame of funk and soul, with her fiery red hair, fierce eyes, and voice that can tear down all barriers. She is the goddess of rebellion in the music of the 70s and 80s. But behind that image is a woman who once dared to say, "I don't love by gender, I love by energy." That statement opened up a whole gray area in her private life, where love is not bound by stereotypes. While on tour with a group of female jazz artists, Chaka had a deep relationship with the band's bassist. The two shared sleepless nights, smoked cigarettes on the hotel balcony, and wrote lyrics that were never released. Once, when the group was away, that person put his lips on Chaka's shoulder, just for a brief second, but it was photographed. The next day, the bassist was pulled from the tour without explanation. Chaka did not speak, but in a later interview, when asked about her ideal lover, she simply replied, "Brave enough to truly love me, whoever it is." Today, Chaka still sings, speaks, and does charity work. No one knows who is by her side, but perhaps she does not need the world to accept her. She just needs the world to stop asking. Kindness is not about agreeing or disagreeing. It is knowing when to be silent, so that others can live according to their own heart. 7. Betty Wright, the woman who sang about love that no one dared to define. Betty Wright is known as a 70s R&B icon with her soaring voice and emotional performance style. Her songs, such as "Clean Up Woman" and "Tonight Is the Night," were bold confessions about a woman who understood sex, emotions, and the desire to be loved. But few people know that at the height of her popularity, Betty wrote an unreleased demo with the suggestive lyrics, "She touched me like no man ever dared." The line was blocked by the record company and replaced with another version. An old friend told me that when she was a young artist in Miami, Betty had a girlfriend named Marie who played the organ in the church. They often practiced singing together in the late afternoons, when the church was empty. One day, the local pastor caught them hugging in the organ room and asked Betty not to come again. Marie disappeared after that. Betty never mentioned her name, but her eyes always softened when asked about her first love. As time went on, Betty's music became more and more filled with deep emotions. Although she never made it public, many people believed that her gentle ballads were a response to someone who would never return. Sometimes, being kind means listening to a song not only with your ears, but with your heart, to feel the loneliness of someone who dared to love but was not allowed to name that love. 6. Faith Nolan, the blues singer with the voice of the unheard. Faith Nolan is not a household name in the R&B scene, but for the LGBTQ+ community and social activists, she is an indispensable voice. Born into a working-class African-Canadian family, Faith grew up in poverty, racism, and gender pressure. Music became the only place where she could truly live, breathe, and love. She once said, "I don't sing to be a star. I sing so that people like me know they're not alone." Faith had her first love with a girl named Renee, a community event organizer in Toronto. The two openly loved each other during the early years of the feminist movement. One night after a show, when the two held hands and walked into a restaurant, they were kicked out for offending the customers. Renee burst into tears at the door, and Faith simply said, "We're still going to sing. Don't let them take our voices away." They were together for many years, but then their lives took a turn. Renee went abroad, Faith stayed, continuing to perform, write music, and fight. Today, she lives simply, organizing music classes for young gay people who have been kicked out of their homes. Faith doesn't need to stand on a big stage. Her voice still sings steadily, like a small flame that never goes out. Being kind isn't about being famous or honored. It's about being patient, living truthfully, singing truthfully until the end. 5. Whitney Houston, the lost angel in a love that shouldn't exist. Whitney Houston was once the golden voice of a generation. With "I Will Always Love You," she melted the world. But few people know that the greatest love of her life, not Bobby Brown, was Robin Crawford, her close friend from high school, her manager, who quietly followed her throughout the early years of her career. That relationship was suspected, warned by many people in the crew, and finally forced to end to protect her public image. A former employee recalled that once. Whitney and Robin were caught holding hands backstage before a show. Clive Davis then asked Robin to go away for a while. Whitney did not react, but after that night, her voice seemed to lose strength. Robin continued to work, but from a distance. Eventually, Robin withdrew from the team. Whitney fell into a spiral of toxic marriage, addiction, and years of brokenness. Robin said in her memoir that they once dreamed of a small house in Hawaii, where no one asked who they were, no one needed a reason. But that dream never came true. When Whitney died, Robin did not appear in public, but in an interview, she said, "I loved her. It's just that the world didn't allow it." Perhaps love is never wrong. It's just that people are too afraid of being different. Kindness, sometimes, is just daring to let others live a full life. Not in song, but in reality. 4. Tracy Chapman, the woman who sang about freedom but lived in the shadow of love. Tracy Chapman rose to fame with Fast Car as a quiet wind blowing away prejudices about black singers. Her voice whispered into the hearts of lonely people. But behind that image was a controversial love affair with writer Alice Walker. During the early years of their fame, Tracy and Alice lived together for a short time. Once backstage at a private show, Tracy held Alice's hand, but when she saw a photographer, she immediately withdrew her hand. The relationship ended. Alice once said she loved me, but was afraid that it would be known. Currently, Tracy still lives a private life, without social media, without gossip. Sometimes, kindness is to let people love, without explanation. 3. Nedra Johnson, the saxophone woman with the voice of rebellion. Nedra Johnson is not a diva, but anyone who has heard her perform knows that she is an unyielding soul. The daughter of jazz musician Howard Johnson, Nedra chose a more straightforward path, living honestly and singing honestly about taboos. At a small show in New Orleans, she once sang a love song between two women and was thrown a water bottle by a male audience member. Nedra did not dodge. She bowed and said, "Thank you, but I do not drink silence." Her first love was a drummer, also a lesbian. The two broke up due to social pressure, but have continued to collaborate artistically until now. Nedra does not ask anyone to accept her. She only loves through the music she creates. 2. Michelle Ndegeocello, the woman who blurs sexual boundaries. Michelle was the first artist signed by Maverick to record LGBTQ+ soul music in If That's Your Boyfriend. She shocked and captivated audiences with her bass playing and unusual lyrics. But few people know that her first love was a woman 12 years her senior, a poetry teacher in D.C. She once wrote a song specifically for her, but the label refused to release it because it was uncommercial. She quietly released it independently, adding the line, "Love is not an art for cowards." Today, Michelle lives with her female partner and son. Kindness to her means music without judgment and love without permission. 1. Carl Bean, the man who carries the souls of those who cannot sing. Carl Bean was not a female singer, but his voice became an icon of the queer R&B movement. His song I Was Born This Way became the unofficial anthem of the Black LGBTQ+ community. Carl was a pastor, but was also expelled from his church for daring to say he loved men. In a private ceremony, he said that his first love was a childhood friend, someone he did not dare call his lover. Carl lived his whole life for the community, founded his church, helped people with HIV, and taught gay children to love themselves. He died in 2021, leaving behind an indelible legacy. Kindness is not agreeing. Kindness is staying silent so that others can tell the truth about their lives. There are too many rumors, too much laughter, and too little listening in this world. It's time we stop asking who they are, who they love, and whether they are right or wrong. Let's see them as artists, as human beings, as souls who know how to love and hurt, because understanding doesn't make us weak, it makes us more human. We know it's not easy to go through 20 emotional stories like this. Thank you for your patience, kindness, and listening heart. Please like the video if you feel these stories deserve to be known, and share so that more people understand that love, in any form, is worth cherishing.